Friends and family, as well as representatives from various organizations, came to pay their last respects during a highly emotional memorial service held at Intlanganiso High School at Site C in Khayelitsha. Family spokesperson Nkosana Mguga described Aviwe as a very loving person.
She was the kind of a person that has brought joy into the family, and which we'll miss dearly so much.
She says, "We are very disappointed because this is Women's Month. Her life was taken away by someone she trusted, but he decided to cut her life."
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and thank you for joining me here again today. Sadly, today we are talking about a case about another bright young lady who was taken too soon. And this case was another subscriber suggested case, so thank you very much for suggesting it. But today we are talking about the case of Aviwe Jam-Jam or Jam-Jam. My apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. And Aviwe had everything going for her, and sadly it was taken in a blink of an eye. But with that being said, let's get into this case.
Intended for mature audiences only.
Aviwe was born near King Williamstown in the Eastern Cape on the 5th of July 1992. Her mom's name is Nomthandazo, and her dad's name is Liba. Aviwe has one sibling, which is a younger brother. Aviwe was said to be the light of everybody's life. She was incredibly kind, loving, and just a happy spirit and always smiling. And Aviwe absolutely adored her family and her friends. And things were great in her mom and dad's household for a while, until sadly things started to go a bit south and her mom and dad did separate. And Aviwe ended up going to Cape Town with her brother and her mom to stay in Khayelitsha. And her dad moved to Johannesburg. So he left the Eastern Cape to now live in Johannesburg. But like I said earlier, Aviwe absolutely adored her family, and she would often travel back to Johannesburg to visit her dad during the school holidays or any time that she could, really, because she was very close to her father. As time went on, Nomthandazo and Liba actually ended up marrying different people. So Nomthandazo ended up marrying a man named Michael, and Liba ended up marrying another lady. But luckily, Aviwe and her brother would get on very, very well with both their step-parents, and you often hear in stories about how evil the stepmother or stepfathers are, and luckily this was not the case. Unfortunately, though, Aviwe's parents did struggle with raising her and her brother, so they didn't often have a lot that was available to Aviwe and her brother in terms of money, and they couldn't always get everything they wanted, but her parents did try very hard. And when Aviwe was at school, she always would tell her friends how she wanted to work really hard and maybe become a model one day and become famous, but she wanted to make sure that she could help bring her family out of the poverty cycle that they were in. Aviwe did attend Cape Town High School, and her grades were pretty good. She did end up matriculating, and she went on to study at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, where she was studying tourism. And in Cape Town, we just call the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, we just call this university CPUT. And while Aviwe was at CPUT, she did end up meeting a man named Linda Ntulo, and they hit it off instantly, almost right away. They were inseparable, and you know in the movies where you kind of see a guy hanging off the side of his car and he's kind of staring at the woman walking down the stairs and everything's so romantic. This is kind of the vibe I get with Linda and Aviwe. But Linda was always around campus, and he was always seen with Aviwe. And when I first read this, I thought, oh, that's so sweet, you know, they're so romantic, they just want to be with each other all the time. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't know if I would like that. As far as I know, roughly, if you have back-to-back classes, you maybe have like a 15-minute gap between classes if you're lucky. And you now have to run from one class to the other in order to get there in time. And if Linda was constantly outside each of Aviwe's classes, then firstly, he knew exactly which class and where she was coming out of every day. And he knew exactly to be in that specific place for 15 minutes to make sure that he walked her from point A to point B. I don't know, each to their own, I guess. Maybe it is romantic and I'm just one of those people. But anyway, Aviwe and Linda were absolutely inseparable and they were happy, which is important. However, Aviwe, as you can see, is absolutely stunning. And like I said earlier, she was an aspiring model. And I'm 100% sure that Aviwe turned heads not only at campus but in the street. And Linda absolutely hated this. Linda was so incredibly jealous that at first when she was putting on her makeup or she was trying to look nice, he would kind of give snide comments and try and bring her down that way, but it didn't work. Aviwe was absolutely protruding confidence, and so she should. She's stunning. And Aviwe had goals and ambitions in mind, and she would just kind of like, yeah, Linda, whatever. But the more that Linda noticed that his comments weren't affecting Aviwe like he thought they would, he started getting slightly more physical and he started hurting her. And the people close to her, and often the people that she would confide in, often would see not only the bruises on her, but they would also see that her whole demeanor started just becoming more closed off and so quiet. And people who were close to her absolutely begged her to please leave Linda. They could see what was coming and they just didn't want Aviwe to be in this position. But love is blind, and she ended up staying with Linda. But on the upside, Aviwe did eventually graduate from CPUT with a diploma in tourism. And almost immediately after she left varsity, she ended up getting a job at an airport company. And this airport company was based in the Cape Town International Airport, which she would work in every day. A few months into her job, she did end up getting pregnant with Linda's baby, and Linda and Aviwe decided, okay, things are getting a bit more serious. Let's get more serious together, and they ended up moving in together. Eventually, Aviwe did end up giving birth to a baby boy. Now, living from your partner is very different to just seeing your partner every now and then or every day and then having quite a lot of time apart from each other. But now that Aviwe and Linda were so close together and living in such close proximity, sadly, all of the rage and frustration that Linda was showing before was now amplified even more towards Aviwe now that they were living together. But Aviwe was getting tired of walking on eggshells, and she was getting tired of the hostility at home, and she ended up calling her stepmom. Remember, her stepmom and her dad live in Joburg, so she ended up calling her stepmom, and she starts crying on the phone. She's telling her stepmom exactly what's been happening, and she said that she really wants to get away. Please, can she come stay in Joburg with her father as well? And the stepmom's like, of course you can, I'm going to give you some money. And she EFT'd her some money for the plane ticket, and Aviwe the next day hopped on a plane with her son to Joburg. Aviwe didn't tell anyone where she was going besides her mom and obviously her dad and her stepmom because she was living with them, but no one knew. And in Joburg, Aviwe absolutely thrived. She was safer, she was happier, and she was just so much more relaxed that she didn't have this pressure of when is Linda coming at me or anything like that. And Aviwe's dad and her stepmom absolutely loved having her there, and they loved having their grandchild there as well. But I'm not sure how happy Aviwe's mom was that she was in Joburg, because she would call Aviwe and just say, you know, you actually need to come home, I'm missing you. And I think that she did make Aviwe feel a little bit guilty about being so far away. But around a month later of Aviwe being in Joburg, back in Cape Town, Linda hasn't given up on finding Aviwe, because remember, he left the house that morning, and when he came back, Aviwe was gone, and so was his son. So Linda arrives at Aviwe's mom's house and the house of Aviwe's stepfather, Michael. Remember, I mentioned him earlier. So Linda rocks up at the house and he's like, where's Aviwe? I want them right now. I know you're hiding them. Bring them out now. Aviwe's mom's like, actually, we don't have them. They're not here. You need to leave now. And Linda's getting more and more worked up. He's getting more and more angry. And eventually Linda then takes out a machete and he starts absolutely swinging at everyone and anything. And he makes contact quite badly with Michael, Aviwe's stepfather. And he ends up getting more than 10 stitches to the top of his head. But he is okay, and he did make a full recovery. Now, after this whole incident happened, Aviwe was still in Joburg, and her mom was calling, and they were just having a chat, and Aviwe mentioned that she finds it quite difficult to find a job in Joburg. She believes that it's a lot easier in Cape Town. And her mom's like, exactly, you need to come home. See, that's her reason. And then her mom started spilling that she felt that Aviwe was running away from all her problems, and that she was kind of being a bad mother because she had a baby boy who relied on her. And Aviwe's mom then decided that she was going to try and find jobs on behalf of her. And that's kind of where the conversation ended, and Aviwe was not impressed with this at all. Then around 2.5 months after Aviwe was now in Joburg, her mom calls back and says, you need to come back to Cape Town. I found the perfect job for you at a hotel. It's in the waterfront. It's very exclusive. So you need to come home and have the interview for this job. And Aviwe's like, no, I don't want to come back. Do you not understand that I don't want to come back? There's reasons that I don't want to go back to Cape Town. And Aviwe's mom was kind of not having it. She's like, you need to have a job and you need to support your son. So kind of get on with it, basically. Eventually, a few weeks went by and Aviwe eventually relented, and she said that she was going to come back to Cape Town. So Aviwe lands in Cape Town. She goes to the job interview at the waterfront, which she is unfortunately not successful in. So she ends up having no job, but she goes to stay with her mom after the interview for a little while with her boy. And then around 2 weeks after Aviwe landed in Cape Town, Linda eventually tracked her down and they started talking, and Aviwe thought that maybe they could sort out their problems. And Linda eventually convinced Aviwe to move back in with him and their child. Everyone was like, no, don't do it, don't move back in. But Aviwe thought, maybe I could change him, maybe we could just do better. And Aviwe's mom would often call the house just to check in and just see how things are and how the job hunting was going. And Aviwe would talk to her about it. And then on this particular day of the 22nd of July, 2017, the conversation was no different, and her mom was talking about random things. And near the end of the conversation, Aviwe did ask her mom if it's okay if she could bring her child over to her mom's house so that she could babysit her baby boy, because she really wanted to go to an event the next day. So of course Aviwe's mom was like, sure, no problem. Make sure you bring your baby with his clothes, his food, and I will look after him that day, no problem. So her mom did expect to see her the next day to drop off her child. But the next day came and went, and Aviwe did not rock up in Khayelitsha with her baby to drop off at her mom's house. Her mom didn't really think much into it. She thought maybe that Aviwe just didn't want to go out, and she just switched off her phone because her mom did try and call, but there was no answer. It went straight to voicemail. But then a couple days went by afterwards, and Aviwe's phone was still off, and people could not get hold of her. And then her mom started to panic, and they went to the Khayelitsha police station to report Aviwe is missing. The police naturally rock up at Linda's house because that's where Aviwe was staying, so obviously they would go and have a look. They did have a search warrant to search the premises, and they walked into the house, and obviously there was a lot of Aviwe's DNA. There was a lot of fingerprints of hers because she lived there. But then one police officer decided to go around the back, and he saw Linda's car, and he's having a look through the car with his flashlight, and then he sees nothing. So he pops open the boot, and there he sees a lot of blood, like a whole pile in the corner, and then in the other corner there was bloody clothes and rags. A police officer then goes to ask Linda, what is this? And then Linda kind of says some story about how he hit an animal, he put the animal in the back of his car and then buried the animal. And the police officer was like, you're right. He takes the clothes out of the boot and he takes it to forensics to try and see whose blood and what blood this actually is. Then sadly on the 29th of July 2017, a young lady's body is found outside of Athlone Stadium, and her body was found by a security guard doing his patrols. Once forensics come back with the entire bag of bloody clothing, they sadly do find that it is Aviwe's blood. The post-mortem then determined that sadly Aviwe had been beaten to death, very, very horrifically. Linda was arrested for the suspected murder of Aviwe Jam-Jam, but this trial has gone on and is constantly being postponed, and even though he's arrested and in jail, it's not for Aviwe's murder. He's actually in jail serving a sentence for the attack on Aviwe's stepfather. Remember, with the machete? So that's where he is actually serving time for. But for Aviwe's murder, like I said, the trial keeps going on, keeps getting postponed. And one of the reasons that the trial has been postponed, because Linda's lawyer, who was actually defending him, was found murdered and shot to death outside his business district. Interestingly enough, this lawyer who was defending Linda is also the lawyer who defended the Kraaifontein butcher. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it up here. But it's interesting that this lawyer defended these two men. A very small world we're living in. But yeah, so the trial hasn't continued. He is still not found guilty for Aviwe's murder, even though he has been arrested for it. The trial still needs to go on to actually convict him and sentence him. But that is the case of Aviwe Jam-Jam. I hope that her and her family get the justice that they deserve. And like I said in last week's video, South Africa sometimes gets things really on point. But things like this, where trials are now waiting for almost 4 years, where the perpetrator hasn't even been sentenced, is just ridiculous. But that is today's case. I hope that you are staying safe. Please don't talk to strangers, and I'll see you again next week. Bye.